Hi, I'm Robert, and otherwise known as your not-so-humble correspondent, Robert Black, and I'm doing this video for Fat Boy Cartel podcast. Like, share, and subscribe. Eric Hopkins and his crew, shout out to them. They're doing a real good job out there. This is not a rebuttal video so much as a companion video to one that Quiz Show Mike did not too long ago. He is a good friend of mine. I've known him for many years, and it was good to see and hear his voice again after all the pandemic stuff. And I'll go on record, he is the best and most loyal friend anybody could have. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. He's a great guy. I agree with about 99% of everything he said. The 1% I didn't agree on was the loyalty to WWE thing, but that's a long-standing personal debate between us, which we're not going to go into here. Now, one of the questions that he asked was, why are things the way they are in the WWE, and why is Vince and his company making the various decisions that they are? And I think I know why. I have a theory. And that is that not only is Vince McMahon getting ready to step down from his company, not only is he getting ready to sell it, but WWE is going to break up into about 3 or 4 different entities within the next year and a half. And I don't think that Vince McMahon is doing that because he wants to. I think he's doing it because he has to. And the reasons are deeper and more complex than what is being let on at the surface. And the theory goes like this. Linda McMahon, who was once a member of the Trump administration as head of their Department of Small Business Administration. I believe that while she was at that job, she was privy to information that was detrimental to WWE. But she couldn't tell Vince about it because she was obligated to secrecy while she was a federal employee. So she was in that plum position that would have been helpful to WWE for only a couple of years. She left it as soon as it was expedient, and she became the head of Trump's PAC instead. So she's still employed by the man, but she's not a federal employee. Now, let's go with a few premises here. Number one, Vince McMahon is not stupid or crazy. All right? You don't become a multimillionaire and run a multi-billion-dollar business and be an idiot. That's not who Vince McMahon is. Also, his priorities, his main motives in life are family preservation and protecting those loyal to him. And the only time that he deviates from the business model that he created in the 80s is when that business model conflicts with those two motivations, family and personal loyalty. Protecting those loyal, protecting blood. Okay, those are the only times that Vince goes out of his way to not do what he does in a business sense. So he's not doing what he's doing because he's sick and senile. He's spent the last 4 years getting WWE ready to sell, not only to sell, but to split into 3 or 4 pieces. And he's basically doing it to save his nest egg, so that the federal government will not break up his company for him through antitrust laws. And I'm basing that on something that happened in history, ironically, at the same time that Vince McMahon was building his monopoly in professional wrestling. And that was the breakup of AT&T. Now, for those of you who are under 40, to you, AT&T may just be another phone company, another cell provider. But before 1984, AT&T was the phone company. If you had a phone, you were doing business with Ma Bell, whether you liked it or not. Now, the monopoly was unofficial because there were a lot of local and regional businesses, but all of them were subsidiaries of AT&T, and the federal government looked the other way because AT&T was so powerful. It's kind of like what Microsoft had for a while, but they didn't. And basically the same thing happened to them, and the same thing's going to happen with WWE. And if you follow the developments since basically September of 2018 to now, all of the things that normally wouldn't make sense start to make sense. The first step that Vince took was that once Linda told him this information, once she was no longer a federal employee and could tell him all these things, he decided to take 4 steps. The first was to supplement his own competition. Now, I was at All In September of 2018, and there was a WWE contingent there. Pat Patterson was there, Gerald Briscoe was there, Jerry Lawler was there, and they were all present at an event called the Roast of Bruce Pritchard. Major players in WWE, and they were involved in StarCast, the convention before the All In pay-per-view. They were on Vince's radar, but strangely, a year later, he's ignoring them, even when they've started a new company and their first pay-per-view is in Vegas. So there's something screwy going on right there, right off the bat, and I think Vince McMahon, I don't think, had a personal hand in creating AEW, but I think that he had a hand in influencing it. And he might have talked the Khans into investing in Cody, the Bucks, and the Hangman, and Kenny Omega. The second thing he did was he started to gradually, up until now, starting to de-emphasize his costs. He started to not take chances on new people. And he started trying to maximize his profits, which meant going with the old guard and doing all the stupid crap that happened in Saudi Arabia. And all of this has to do with the breakup of Ma Bell in 1981, because it's around the same model. My mom used to love this skit that Saturday Night Live used to do with Lily Tomlin. She played this smart-ass telephone operator that would make fun of people calling in to complain, and she was the one that called in to collect on bills for people for phone calls they hadn't made. And she would make fun of them. We don't care. We don't have to. We're the phone company. And from 2001 to 2017, WWE had that kind of hubris. The cruise control and everything. They had a monopoly. But eventually all that caught up with AT&T. And antitrust lawsuits, they lost them on the state level, and all of that was rising to the Supreme Court. So and all that was going on through the 1970s, and people knew they had a monopoly. So Instead of waiting for the federal government to break them up and destroy their company, AT&T did it themselves. They split up into 22 local entities controlled, but they let go of all their regional holdings and they branched out into other avenues of business. And that's why they're still alive today. And that's why you've got companies like Verizon, T-Mobile, and Cricket, and all the others that can provide cell service. Can you imagine how much cell service would suck today if the Bell system were still in operation? That is a nightmare. But Vince McMahon knows that he's not as powerful as AT&T. So instead of getting into another fight with the federal government now that the administration is hostile to him again, he's accelerating the process. He was going to do this anyway because he knew about the federal investigations through Linda, but now he's accelerated it. And if you look at everything that's happened since the formation of AEW, everything that seems insane that the WWE has been doing lately now seems to make sense. I mean, if you take a look at it, what they've been doing, if you look at it through that lens, it makes absolute sense. The network buying Peacock. General Electric owns Peacock and NBC and a whole lot of other things, and they are the perfect company to buy WWE's IP. All of the stupid crap that happened in Saudi Arabia makes sense. Letting the old guard come in, signing that inflated contract to have performers in Saudi Arabia for 10 years, $150 million, maximizing his profit, making the sale more enticing, and cutting his costs, not taking chances on new talent. NXT being watered down, and all the ruining of people who were called up, like Joe, like Shinsuke Nakamura and Sami Zayn and Finn Balor and anybody else they've called up from NXT have been completely screwed up. They wouldn't take a chance on them, and this is why, I believe. Creative going on cruise control again, like they did in the 2000s and into the 2010s, wanting to keep everything status quo, bland, and even. Now they're doing it because they don't want to take chances. Ignoring AEW as a legitimate threat when they haven't had competition in 20 years. They're ignoring that because that's what they want. They want competition so that they can prove that they're a big fish in a large ocean competing with sitcoms and game shows and other crap instead of being professional wrestling, which would make them a whale in a fishbowl. It's an obvious monopoly if WWE is professional wrestling, but if they're sports entertainment, then they're not. And that was the whole point of the rebranding. It wasn't just the panda. And you notice that there's very little, if any, activity from WWE films these days, which was supposed to be a supplementary form of income for WWE to prove they weren't just professional wrestling, and now they're kind of offline. So, in the end, what I think is going to happen within the next year or so, WWE is going to not only be sold, but it's going to be split into 4 or 5 different pieces. You're already kind of seeing the balance of it already. That's one of the reasons why they're not catering to Fox as much. Well, why Fox is not really that anxious about what happens with Smackdown. They want it to succeed, but WWE is not having a heart attack over Smackdown's ratings or anything. It's because Smackdown is going to be sliced off, and it's either going to disappear or it's going to be rebranded as just Smackdown Wrestling, and Fox is going to run it as its own thing, separate of WWE. What I think is going to happen is that somewhere before Survivor Series, after the fiscal year's over, October 1st, it's going to be officially announced that Vince McMahon is stepping down, and he's going to hand over the reins to Stephanie. And her primary goal is going to be to ready the company for sale to GE. Then, sometime before the Royal Rumble or after the first of the year, the sale is going to be announced in its actual form. And the lead up to WrestleMania is going to be a Vince McMahon tribute. They're probably going to put Vince himself in the WWE Hall of Fame. And WrestleMania 38 will be the swan song for the McMahons as the owners of World Wrestling Entertainment. And within a year, 6 months to a year, the gradual breakup and takeover is going to happen. WWE will still exist as an IP, but it will only be Raw and the network on Peacock with its pay-per-views. And all WWE content will be exclusively Peacock, exclusively on USA, and WWE will just be Raw again. Smackdown will either be dismantled and taken away, or Fox will rebrand it and do just Smackdown Wrestling, give it its own titles, make it its own entity, and it will ultimately become what it was supposed to be in the first place, WCW, or a variation with a different name. And NXT will disappear completely. They'll slice that up, send everybody on their separate ways, and they'll either sign a Fox contract or they'll sign a new Peacock contract. But the point of all this is that over the next 2 years, the landscape of professional wrestling is going to become unrecognizable. And the forbidden door is not only going to be kicked open, but virtually smashed into non-existence. After all, Vince McMahon wouldn't dare do business with Tony Khan, but GE might. Now, this could be a good or bad thing depending on how you feel as a wrestling fan. But to me, there is no doubt that within the next couple of years, we are going to be going into some very wild, uncharted waters. Things that we couldn't have dreamed happening 5 or even 2 years ago. And I think it's Vince McMahon's way of apologizing for nationalization. And he's trying to give back to the business that he took away from. Now, all of this could be speculation. I could be 100% wrong. I'm just a play-by-play commentator in Indiana. And, I'm not an expert on economics or federal investigations or finances. But if you connect all these dots, everything that seems stupid in the WWE right now suddenly makes sense. Anyway, I thought that I would answer my friend's question. And be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. And this is Robert. I'm signing out.
Yeah, ready to go, man, lock and load. That's right. I swear to God that I could drop you, bro. Yeah, I got a shot and I ain't stopping, no. That's how I know that I'm unstoppable.